Welcome back, true crime lovers. Back again with another sassy true crime video. I'm Kat, and today we're here to shine some additional light on the Madeline Soto case. I'm going to talk about motive and what I think could have been one of the reasons Stephan Sterns allegedly took Maddie's life. And I'm going to compare it to some of the evidence. I'm going to compare some of the evidence released in the Madeline Soto case with another true crime case, which is more personal to me. The defendant in that case is Arthur Wildgoose, and he's currently serving 30 years in a New Jersey state prison. So let's get into it. I just want to start by saying I love these pictures taken of Maddie on February 25th, 2024, from her 13th birthday party. This was just hours before Maddie was taken from this earth. Imagine all this little girl was going through at this time, but she was still twirling and smiling and enjoying her birthday. Now, this is the monster who allegedly took poor Madeline's life at 13 years old. He's currently sitting in the Osceola County Jail awaiting trial. So what do we know so far in the Madeline Soto case? We know this man, Stephan Sterns, has been charged with first-degree murder of Madeline Soto, along with an additional 60 counts of child sex abuse crimes against 13-year-old Madeline Soto. We also know from the autopsy that Madeline died of asphyxiation in the early morning hours of February 26, 2024, and that Stephan Sterns was seen driving around later that morning with Madeline's limpless body in the passenger seat of his father's car. We also know from police interviews he told authorities he dropped Madeline off at school that morning. And lastly, we know that Stephan Sterns is seen on security cameras around 11 a.m. putting Madeline's lifeless body in the trunk of his car. So even though you're innocent until proven guilty, I think we can safely say that Madeline's life was taken by Stephan Sterns' hands in the early morning hours of February 26th. But what I want to talk about today is what we don't know. The why. Why did Madeline have to die that day? What was the motive? Well, I have two motive theories, but in this video, I'd like to explore theory number one. Theory number one. Stephan Sterns thought Maddie was pregnant, so he deliberately took her life. Now, we know based off the charges against Stephan Sterns that Madeline was not pregnant at the time of her death. But did Stephan Sterns think Maddie could possibly have been pregnant? First, I want to take a look at the text that Madeline sent to Stephan Sterns on December 16th, 2023. I've been trying to get into Madeline's mindset based off the things we know to be facts and try to understand how Maddie felt about this situation with Stephan Sterns that she found herself in. And I think this text shows us Maddie's mind state. In my opinion, Maddie had been through so much by this point in her life in December 2023 when she sent this text, and she was mentally on a different level than most 13-year-olds who hadn't gone through what she had. Her father, Tyler Wallace, made a statement to police that the last time he'd seen Maddie, she reminded him of a Euphoria character, which really gives me some insight into Maddie's personality. And it's on track with what a child who had been subjected to what Maddie was would act like. More mature than their age, and like they've seen some stuff in their young life. By putting all of this evidence together, we can better understand why Maddie sent this text. Now, we see this evidence of a text from the investigation report, but we don't know 100% that Maddie wrote it because the name is redacted, but from the context, it appears to be Maddie asking Stephan Sterns to buy them pregnancy coins. So let's read from the investigative report what the text said. So on December 16th, 2023 at 12:47 a.m. in the morning, Redacted sends a text to Stephan that contained a photograph of two coins. The coins had the inscription of New Parent Decision Coin and appeared to be from Amazon.com. Redacted sends two follow-up texts to Stephan stating, We need this, and get it for us, please. A search of Amazon for these coins revealed these coins are for new parents, where one can flip a coin to decide if it's the mother's or father's time to complete a task for the newborn. Due to the fact that this conversation was not near Father's Day or Mother's Day, leads one to believe Redacted and Stephan had possibly spoke about conceiving a child. Now, I know most people would say this is a very disturbing conversation, and I agree, it is. A 12-year-old asking her abuser to purchase something for their future children. These are the hard conversations that we need to have because we need to open our eyes to the grooming techniques of these pedophiles. A child, Madeline, was talking to a grown man about adult things. We are taking a glimpse into the manipulation of Stephan Sterns. What was being discussed between Maddie and Stephan, that Madeline thought they might need pregnancy coins, that's disturbing. Apparently, there was talk of them having children together. That seems like the obvious conclusion, right? Now, I'm not in the least blaming Maddie here. I want to make that clear. This isn't Maddie's fault. Sadly, this was just her normal. These were normal conversations in her life. Maddie was only 8 years old, based off the evidence, maybe younger, when this 30-something-year-old man started abusing her physically and mentally. It wasn't just physical abuse this poor child was enduring. She was stuck in that home with two monsters. Yes, two monsters. Her mother, Jen Soto, is a monster in my eyes as well. They were both emotionally manipulating her, in my opinion. Imagine all the things poor Maddie was dealing with. The meds they had her on, the abuse, just emotionally having to deal with a man like Stephan Sterns at 12 years old. That would be taxing on an adult. Maddie was probably so anxious, hurt, and confused. This probably caused a tumultuous relationship with Jen, with her mother, and then Stephan Sterns was the good guy. The grooming was real. I believe Maddie, after being manipulated and abused for so many years, started to believe that she was in love with Stephan Sterns and that they were dating. Then I'm sure at some point Stephan Stern brings up that he wants children and a family with Maddie. But why have this conversation with a child, knowing that if she did get pregnant at 13, he would be exposed? I feel that this is a tactic that pedophiles use. Planting seeds of having children together is used as part of the manipulation to eventually try to have sex with the child, as disturbing as that is. But I've seen this manipulation in another case, which is the one that I spoke of earlier. This is Arthur Wildgoose, and he is currently serving a 30-year sentence in a New Jersey state prison. He received 25 years for the charge of first-degree aggravated sexual assault of a victim under 13, and then 5 years for third-degree endangering the welfare of a child. So he was sentenced in 2018 to 30 years with an 85% parole disqualifier. The A.J. Wildgoose case is personal to me because I personally know Arthur Wildgoose, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about shining the light and exposing how predators move, so the next mother sees the signs before their child is left vulnerable and becomes a victim to one of these monsters. So, like Stephan Sterns, Arthur Wildgoose preyed on a woman with a young child. The victim in this case was only 12 years old. Thankfully, this child didn't have to lose her life. Like Stephan Sterns, Arthur Wildgoose discussed having children with the 12-year-old victim. Like Stephan Sterns, Arthur Wildgoose was in his 30s at the time of the abuse. 32, to be exact, on the day of the assault. The reason I'm comparing the two cases is to show, through the text evidence in the Arthur Wildgoose case, the manipulation and how a groomer plants thoughts of having children together as a way to just manipulate the child into having sex. The child isn't interested in having sex. So the adult tricks the child with promises of a family of their own, which sounds magical to the child at the time, who might be fighting with their mother because of the wedge the groomer has formed between the mother and the child. Just to give some background, I was first introduced to Arthur Wildgoose in 2003. This is when I first met my ex-husband, and Arthur was one of his best friends. My ex-husband, my daughter, and I all hung out with Arthur, who we called AJ. We hung out with him, his wife, now ex-wife, and their 2 children. We all even joined a bowling league together. We were called the Gutter Gang. That was in 2008. We also took trips to baseball games, Great Adventure, all family trips with the kids. We spent time at each other's homes, went to their wedding, and my daughter became friendly with his children. After I was divorced from my ex-husband in 2012, I lost touch with AJ for a couple years. Then in 2014, remember that date, Arthur Wildgoose reached out to me and asked me to go out for dinner and drinks. I did not feel comfortable doing that with my ex-husband's best friend, so I declined the offer. I thought nothing of it at the time until I found out 2 years later, in 2016, that AJ was arrested for child abuse. When I first heard of his charges, I was shocked, as I'm sure most people are when they hear news like this about somebody they know, somebody they spent time with, somebody they brought their children around. It was also very disturbing because Arthur had asked me to hang out around the same time frame of the offenses, and I had a young daughter who was just 1 year younger than the victim. This made me extremely angry because I wondered if the offer was to get closer to my daughter. But I was also extremely grateful that I didn't accept his invitation to hang out and didn't give him that opportunity. Okay, so I just want to read some evidence from the Arthur Wildgoose case just to show how groomers manipulate children into having sex. Now, this is from Arthur Wildgoose's appeal that he filed in November 2018, and it was determined in December 2018 that the sentence would be upheld, thankfully. Now, in these documents, CP is going to be the initials for the victim's mother, and BP is going to be the initials used for the victim. The trial revealed the following facts. In December 2014, defendant, Arthur Wildgoose, met CP and her children while defendant and CP coached youth basketball in the same gym. Defendant was a divorced father of 2 young children. CP was a single mother of 3 girls, including 11-year-old BP. Defendant and CP began socializing, and defendant invited CP and BP to play basketball with him and other people in 2015 of February. Defendant visited CP for Sunday family dinners and spent entire weekends at CP's home, with at least one of CP's daughters always present. CP developed a romantic interest in defendant, but defendant repeatedly told her that although he was also interested in her, they would have to find time to do that when they didn't have the kids or when they had free time, which was limited because of their busy lives as single parents. Defendant and CP never went on a date alone or pursued a sexual relationship, and their activities always included CP's children and sometimes defendant's children as well. Defendant took an interest in helping BP with basketball. He went to the gym and watched BP practice, after which BP stayed with the defendant until he brought her home. Defendant, a tow truck operator, took BP with him on calls. He also took BP with him to spread birdseed and apples to attract deer where he hunted. So he had no time to hang out with the mom, but he had time to hang out with the 12-year-old daughter. In April 2015, BP turned 12. Defendant asked CP to bring BP to his house so he could give BP a 6-foot teddy bear that smelled of defendant's cologne, as well as balloons, a Yankee shirt, and lottery tickets. The birthday card read, "Happy birthday, BP. I hope you have an amazing day. I hope you got everything you wanted. Have a happy birthday. Love, AJ. XOXOXO." In October 2015, BP and defendant began texting through their cell phones. Defendant asked BP if she would be his girlfriend, and she responded yes. BP testified that this made her feel very important and special because an older person wanted to be with me. Defendant called her beautiful and referred to her as babe and baby. Defendant told BP that he loved her multiple times a day, both in person and through text messages, and BP responded that she loved him too. Defendant told BP that he wanted her, missed her, and wished he could see her more. Defendant expressed to BP in text messages how it sucks that they cannot walk around as a couple because he would get in trouble. Defendant told BP, "We can't tell anybody about this. And you can't tell mom. Don't tell her. Don't tell her anything." BP testified that defendant instructed her every day to delete everything because he knows her mom checks her phone and she would see everything that they were talking about. In November 2015, defendant began rubbing BP's back, shoulders, arms, and stomach and kissing BP on the cheek and lips while they were alone in CP's basement. Defendant told her that he could go to jail if anyone found out what he was doing with her. BP developed a canker sore on her tongue, while defendant simultaneously had a sore on his mouth. CP confronted defendant, asking if he had been kissing her daughter, and defendant denied having done so. Between November 12th and 13th, 2015, defendant and BP discussed their excitement regarding defendant's upcoming sleepover at CP's house and how they wanted to have a baby together. Defendant sent a text to BP saying, "I really do like you. There isn't a minute that goes by and I don't think about you. If anything happens, then it does. If we are both in the mood, then it's right. Our child will look beautiful. I want the baby to look like you, 'cause you are gorgeous. I just want the baby to have my last name." So he mentions to the child, "If anything happens, then it does. If we are both in the mood," clearly talking about having intercourse, and then he starts the manipulation with "Our child will look beautiful. I want the baby to look like you because you are gorgeous." Now this is just sick. He does not want to have children. He is clearly using this as a way to have sex with the child. It's just sick, disgusting, and it needs to be exposed. I'm not going to read any more online from the trial out of respect for the child victim in this case because it gets very disturbing. Reading this was very hard, but it's the reality of how groomers move, how they manipulate children. Luckily, this child walked away with her life, but she will be scarred forever from this incident. That's why it gets me sick that this man, Arthur Wildgoose, after all the evidence was presented at trial, still says to this day that he is not guilty. And how do I know that? Because I reached out to Arthur Wildgoose in prison, and I've communicated back and forth with him. I had questions like, why did you contact me in 2014? How did you go from being a happily married family man to this? How? How does this happen? Arthur Wildgoose only had one charge of aggravated sexual assault and one charge of child endangerment, and he received a 30-year sentence. So I think it's safe to say Stephan Sterns will not be seeing the light of day unless he's in a prison yard. But back to my theory. As per Stephan Sterns' parents, Stephan Sterns was stressing something on that weekend before Maddie's death. My theory is that for some reason, Stephan Sterns thought Maddie was pregnant, and he came to Jen and Maddie's home on February 26th with the intention of ending Maddie's life to avoid being exposed. But that is just one of my theories. I have another one regarding Stephan Sterns' Google search of sevoflurane, which is a powerful anesthetic that provides hypnosis and amnesia during surgical and procedures in neonatal and pediatric patients. I Googled it, and it's often given before surgeries in conjunction with nitrous oxide. So let's say that Maddie was drugged that last night with the sevoflurane, which I've also read can be administered through inhalation, through inhaling. So this medicine would have had a serious interaction when taken with hydroxyzine, which we know from Jen Soto's interviews that Maddie had taken that night. She had taken hydroxyzine. But that's for another video. I hope you all enjoyed this one, and please keep your eyes open. Look for the red flags. These monsters are hiding in plain sight, and they are preying on our children. But till next time, stay sassy.